It's an early spring morning in 2013. The Panjia Yuan Antique Market, located on the Eastern Third Ring Road in Beijing, welcomes visitors from all places as usual, with rare and unique antiques, old paintings, traditional stationery and jewelry, tickets from old times, pre-modern coins and other sundry attractions. Amongst the crowds of people, a middle-aged man in plain dress is hurrying through shops and stalls. His name is Chen Wen Wu. Chen is a stone carver from the mountains in Jiangxi province. He runs a shop of about 80 foot square here at the Panjia Yuan market with some friends. Every morning, Chen rushes to his shop, opens the door, lays out all the different kinds of handmade seal stones and inkstones before then taking out his precious, intricately designed teapots and making them the most visible items in his shop. If you look a bit closer, you'll find that they are not made of jade, porcelain or the famous zhishe clay, but of stone. These teapots are referred to as Yuyan She Hu, or jade rock carving teapots. They had been quite popular for a time in history, but were considered lost several times before their rebirth in the 1990s. The man responsible for bringing them to life again is Chen Wen Wu, the stone carver. Chen is currently considered the only living successor to the traditional line of Yuyan She Hu makers. Although his shop is the only one of its kind at the Panjia Yuan market, his pots do not sell well because they apparently do not compare favorably to other dazzling rare antiques or items with a long history. Most of the day, Chen has nothing to do but to sit behind his counter, carving with his gravers. For those who stop by and take an interest in his teapots, Chen very heartily proffers a warm welcome, which is often followed by a lecture on the stone teapots.
Are they for decoration or daily use? You can use this one to make tea. You can hardly find another pot like it. It takes so much time to make.
How much is it then?
This one now fetches 20,000 yuan.
Yuyan She Hu is not made of precious stones but of rocks found in mountains. However, it takes time and effort to make a piece of hard rock into a teapot. First, you need to find good rocks and suitable shapes, and then cut them, shape them, hollow them, carve them, polish them, and then finally check them with water. It takes 3 to 8 weeks to make a stone teapot the size of a fist. As the man who revived Yuyan She Hu, Chen has been making stone teapots for 2 decades. Experienced as he is, Chen keeps carving with great caution. Today, a small accident happened when Chen was carving on the belly of a teapot. It meant he had to do it all over again from the beginning after days of hard work. Chen was frustrated. Compared with traditional teapots made of zhishe clay or porcelain, Yuyan She Hu is much harder to make. Zisha clay and porcelain are considered soft materials which are easy to shape and free to design, while stone is hard to cut and designs cannot be altered easily once they have been molded. The original stone needs to be polished bit by bit. Patience is definitely a virtue, especially when you are working on the belly of the pot, because you have to make it as thin as possible to reduce the pot's weight without breaking it. A pot sculptor needs to be extremely careful maneuvering his fingers and his graving tool. Any mistake and a whole piece of work could be ruined. Even a sculptor can't tell whether he's bringing the teapot in his imagination to life, that is, until the last procedure is completed. Chen Wen Wu has decided to visit his family in Jinxi Village, Yushan County, Jiangxi Province, hundreds of miles from Beijing. Chen is the only child in his family who works outside the village, which means chances to see his family are few and far between. On this occasion, Chen is back not only to see his family, but also to find suitable rocks to make his teapots. At 7 a.m. in the morning, when fog still lingers around the mountains, Chen sets out for the Huayu Mountain with his 2 apprentices. They are looking for raw materials to make Yuyan Shehu. Huayu Mountain is also called Jade Mountain, a place where jade stone sleeps. The villagers nearby live off the jade stones found here, which they then make into nice inkstones. Many tunnels and passages remain here after years of quarrying.
You see, this cave, inside his small mouth, actually there is a very big space.
The rocks Chen uses to make the teapots also come from Jade Mountain, but they are different from the rocks used in inkstones. Chen and his apprentices have to go through the different caves one after another to find suitable materials. In these dark and damp caves, Chen feels his way along the wall, checking with a hammer. The sound reveals to him which stones are suitable.
Listen to it. Use a hammer. If it sounds like metal, it's probably a good one. If you hear a puff, the rock's probably flawed.
It took Chen a full day to collect the several rock samples he needed to get the job done. Enough for one day, he thought. The peaceful Jinxi village is excited today because a local theatre troupe is staging a performance on the local Qing Dynasty era stage. Men and women, old and young, all have rushed to see the play, except Chen, despite him being a big theatre fan. Instead, he's busily carving stone teapots at his workshop. A client ordered this teapot 2 weeks ago. Today is the last check for the product. Most of the belly's walls dry within seconds after Chen showers the teapot, but an unexpected mark of water remains, which means the teapot has a leak. 2 weeks' work turns into nothing because of a tiny crack in the rock. If one describes a carving accident as human error, a crack found inside a rock can only be described as a natural disaster, but no one can predict such tiny yet critical flaws. Stemming from the time Chen began trying to revive Yu Yanshe, Chen has become accustomed to failure. Discarded pots pile up in his house. However, he never gives up. Chen believes that life is like a teapot. To perfect it, you have to begin where it comes to an end.
I have failed 10 times in a row now, which means 2 months of work is now in vain, which also means 2 months without any income. So this is really a great challenge for me, but I won't accept failure.
Early next morning, Chen Wen Wu arrives at his workshop. He wants to check again the rocks collected by his apprentices piece by piece to see if any imperfections have been overlooked by them due to their lack of experience. His teacher had done for him in the same manner 20 years ago, when Chen was still an apprentice in an inkstone factory. There are many skilled stone carvers here in Jinxi, but villagers here have been making inkstones for generations. To Chen Wen Wu, the sound of gravers chipping away at rocks form the melodies of his lullabies. At the tender age of 14, Chen Wen Wu dropped out of school to help feed his family of 9. He became an apprentice at an inkstone factory.
Whilst it is said that knowledge brings fortune, we the poor need a pair of skilled hands. For with skilled hands one can make a living. As a craftsman, I can feed my family by the skill of my hands. Learning a skill ensures a happy life.
Life as an apprentice was hard. Chen had to get up before sunrise and either spend his day climbing mountains, looking for raw stones, or learning and practicing stone carving until sunset. He even needed to make his own tools. However, all this early strain and effort laid a solid foundation for Chen's latest stone carving skills. At the age of 17, Chen, still a rookie stone carver, decided to go to Shanghai and try his luck as a salesman. Hauling inkstones weighing 50 kilograms on his thin back, Chen walked along a winding mountain road to Shanghai. Till this day, Chen still remembers his first success in sales.
I tried every place I could think of and kept roaming around Shanghai for 3 days. My shoes were torn, and when I finally got to number 260 Fuzhou Road, I won the first order of my life, 2,000 yuan for about 2,000 pieces with large loads of stone product on my back, trying to sell inkstone to everyone I met. Everybody looked down on me, but I didn't care. I'd accept any deal, even if the price was unfair. Sometimes I felt like a beggar, but with every piece sold, I felt I was closing in on a place for myself in the bigger market.
It is March 2013. The plum rain season has arrived in various cities of southern China. Today, Chen braves the rain to get to his workshop in Shuinan Street, Shangrao City. He has recently received the title of Traditional Chinese Craft Artist and is now preparing for a solo exhibition where he intends to display his entire collection. Chen wishes to introduce Yuyan Shehu to more collectors, teapot enthusiasts, experts, and stone carving scholars.
This piece won the Gold Award of the Jimei Crafts Expo. It's called Xishe Teapot with a reversed handle.
It can deliver the smooth feeling of a young woman's skin.
From his humble beginnings as an unwelcome inkstone carver and salesman to a folk artist who now owns a private workshop where he is currently preparing for a solo exhibition, Chen has experienced tremendous changes in his life thanks in no small part to Yuyan Shehu. With more orders coming in following his trip to Shanghai at the age of 17, Chen Wen Wu set up a small workshop with some of his fellow villagers to produce inkstone. The move turned out to be an unexpected success, and his workshop grew into a big factory. Chen was so successful, he even began to receive orders from abroad. Thanks to the inkstone factory, Chen's family soon began to live a much more comfortable life.
It was not bad. We became wealthy. At that time, telephones were rare to see, but we had one right in our house. Few people in the village could afford motorbikes then, and we had one. It was really a good time. Everybody was envious of our success.
Chen's inkstones sold very well, and he now required much more raw rock material. It was on one very ordinary day, whilst Chen was carrying rocks down the familiar mountain road, that he found something different. At first, Chen tried to make it into an inkstone, but soon found it unsuitable. He examined the rock again and found that it had a more obvious grain composition, which meant it would likely be more porous. The stone reminded him of the ancient story of the local artisans making stone teapots from the early Warring States period. It is said that tea brewed in stone teapots is able to remain fresh for days and is good for your health. Stone teapots were even once very popular amongst the royal family. Unfortunately, stone teapot making was considered a lost art and contemporary practitioners were nowhere to be found. Chen wondered if the stone he was looking at now was of the same material his ancestors used to make teapots. To answer this question, Chen began to search for information about Yuyan Shehu through old records. Although he found little about how to make the stone teapots, Chen did receive a little inspiration.
After I found the stone, I read through descriptions of stone teapots in old books. I believe that our ancestors used these very same rocks to make teapots. So I felt it was my destiny and responsibility to revive the technique and pass it on to the next generation.
Chen made his decision and soon took action. Every evening after finishing his job at the inkstone factory, Chen threw himself into making Yu Yan She Hu. After countless sleepless nights, the rediscovered rocks finally surrendered to Chen's gravers. Yu Yan She Hu was reborn in the hands of a young man. When he's not preparing for his exhibition in Shangrao, Chen mostly keeps to himself in his workshop, working on new pots. When making a new teapot, Chen tends to work out first the shape and the theme of the teapot, and then he proceeds to shave off all the unnecessary parts of the stone according to his paper draft. The next step is hollowing and carving out the pattern details. It takes great energy and time to make stone teapots. Chen often tells his apprentices that to make a good stone teapot, one has to first brace oneself and make friends with hardship and loneliness. The output of stone teapots is limited by their manufacturing difficulty. At the exhibition he held in Shangrao, Chen displayed nearly all the pots he had made over the last 20 years, which add up to only a relatively small number of works. Stone teapots are mainly divided into two categories. One category consists of the decorated, the other consists of the plain. Decorated teapots require originality. Their designs vary with patterns and themes, whilst plain teapots emphasize the primitive beauty of simplicity and smoothness. Comparatively speaking, plain teapots require more material and a particularly delicate touch. Accordingly, they are often sold at a higher price, which now reaches up to 30,000 yuan. To Chen Wen Wu, his most impressive sale was the first stone teapot he ever sold.
The joy of creating is beyond words. I took it to the old lane in Tuanxi and sold it. I felt full of confidence. Sell 100 pieces of inkstone, and you might only get 100 yuan. I sold just one teapot, and the price was already several times higher than that. It took me much more time, but it paid off.
Though not considered a competitive price by today's standards, it was certainly good enough to fill Chen's heart with great joy and, what's more important, hope. Over near Chen's workshop, there can be found a collection of abandoned houses. It's a place he likes to visit when he feels tired. Chen likes to stand here alone, contemplating the piles of inkstone kicking around in the area that once stood his prosperous factory. In 1998, when Chen became ready to expand his new line of business in stone teapots, he incurred a major setback. Chen's inkstone factory was hundreds of thousands of yuan in debt.
Do you know what it meant to be hundreds of thousands of yuan in debt at that time? In a small village like that, it meant you were ruined. Everybody said I was finished. It was supposed to be another successful turning point in my life. Yet everything had to stop there. The engine had lost its power.
Chen has had several setbacks over the years. An accident at a stone pit left him with a huge amount of compensation to pay. Soon after that, a flood at that same stone pit meant another heavy blow, which combined with a recession in Southeast Asia. Many orders from overseas were cancelled and more than 100 workers at the factory had to be let go. Chen tried in vain to avoid bankruptcy. At the time, Chen was forced to make a difficult decision. He decided for the time being to put away his gravers and to work the land instead.
I was under great pressure. If I chose to continue my career as a craftsman, I'd be unable to make a living. I had to find a new way to survive. There was a time when I couldn't even afford a ticket of 10 yuan, and no one was willing to help because I was heavily in debt.
Large debts kept people away from Chen. His income soon dwindled to nothing. To pay his debts, Chen tried everything from brewing liquor to raising pigs. Gradually, he managed to get out of debt, but he was not contented with his life as a farmer. He still dreamed of making Yu Yan Shi Hu. In the year 2004, Chen made another surprising decision. He decided he would have a go at Beijing with his rocks and gravers, ignoring objections from his family.
Once, a friend of mine came to my place, and he said, "It's a shame that a talented man like you had to be a pig raiser." I felt so sad. I'm not saying that I'm too talented to be a farmer, but this kind of life was never my desire. Several months after that, I handed the brewery over to my brother and the pigs to my father, and then left the village alone.
In early spring 2013, Chen rushed back to Beijing with some teapots he brought from his hometown. He said upon visiting Professor Li Zhenqiu of the Central Academy of Fine Arts at his home in Major Hutong or Cinder Lane near Dongdan, Beijing. Now in his 60s, Professor Li has been researching Chinese folk arts and crafts for decades. 9 years ago, Chen became acquainted with Professor Li and began his frequent visits to the professor with his teapots.
Today I brought 2 new pots. This one is Fulu Shou. It contains bat, deer, and peach in Taiwan. This teapot is more likely to bring luck to your family. Your work bears a strong sense of realism. You bring vivid life to stone. The peach branch serves as the handle, a simple but impressive idea.
Today's visit is also for one more reason. The National Folk Art Expo is to be held in Changchun in 6 months. Chen is going to take some of his teapots to the expo, which will be an ideal showcase for Yu Yan Shi Hu.
I saw this young man. He's not content with his achievements as yet. He still takes every opportunity to take part in various events, commercial or academic, from seminars to contests.
Chen seizes every opportunity to introduce his stone teapots to different exhibitions and events, seeking new markets and at the same time exchanging ideas with other artisans. Not too many years ago, Chen was an unpopular migrant in Beijing. Now, he has gradually built his reputation in art and craft circles. here lies a traditional housing compound at West Liu Lichang Street. When Chen Wen Wu first arrived in Beijing, he shared a 9-square-meter room here with another migrant to the city. His belongings in Beijing amounted to a simple small piece of luggage and a sack of heavy stone. Chen did everything he could to promote his teapots and inkstones in this city, but as a newcomer, he continued to face rebuffs.
No one saw value in stone teapots, and they were unwilling to take a risk in purchasing something unknown. My passion and hope slowly depleted. When I left the village, no one supported me. Were I to return home now, having failed? How could I bear facing them like this? So instead, I kept all the disappointment to myself. I chose to stay in Beijing. Even if I knew that meant I might be living off 1 yuan a day, or a bundle of noodles perhaps.
Chen was not defeated by the difficulties of living in a strange city. On the contrary, the challenge encouraged him to go on. Sitting at the park, he began to make a living from stone carving and seal cutting. In the meantime, he was waiting for his next opportunity. Due to his solid grasp of stone carving, Chen's teapots gradually became popular among stone carving enthusiasts. In 2007, Chen's efforts finally received recognition, and he was the youngest member to be inducted into the first folk cultural artists collective of Jiangxi province. The following year, his stone teapot creation Unity, crafted in memory of the victims of the Wenchuan earthquake, won the Baihua Award, China's top award for arts and crafts. Accordingly, the price of yuan shehu soared up from mere hundreds to tens of thousands of yuan. Chen often draws inspiration from the natural environment and daily life. He was brought up in the countryside, so his teapots are often decorated with vegetables, wild animals, and plants. Some even take the shape of food steamers, buckets, or rollers. Through his teapots, we can see what Chen sees and smell what Chen smells in his hometown. At the end of April 2013, Chen is back in Jinshi village again, preparing for a special exhibition to be held in a centuries-old house here. Items to be shown here include not only his inkstones and stone teapots, but also his collection of calligraphy and paintings. Chen hopes that with its ancient beams and old tiles, the house might invoke for visitors nostalgia for older times when paintings and teapots like this were once popular. Chen hopes to gain more attention this way, allowing his teapots and the technique of making yuan shehu to receive the appreciation they deserve and to allow this traditional craft to live on. A new teapot is born today. It is called Qin Chuan Hu, or Qin Scales. The idea comes from Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of the Qin dynasty, the man who standardized the traditional system of weights and measures in ancient China. Illustrated by clean lines, the teapot takes the shape of an ancient weight measure. It looks primitive and elegant. Chen has decided to take it to the upcoming Folk Arts Expo. Yuan Shehu has now again become a big part of Chen's life. His singular mission in life remains to see that his stone teapots receive the recognition and importance of earlier times once more, and that the tradition lives on as a cherished item in the hearts of the Chinese people.